Hello, my name is Eldon Matlick. I'm the horn professor at the University of Oklahoma, and I'm going to give you a clinic on executing Pottag's Etude 57 from his Preparatory Melodies for solo work. There are several areas of concern in this particular exercise. The first and foremost, in my opinion, is the difference between a couple of rhythmic figures. If you look at measure 1 and 3, you have this jagged triplet rhythm of 8th, 16th rest with a 16th note and an 8th. Then if you look at measure 5 and 6, you have a very similar rhythm, but you have now a dotted 8th followed by a 16th followed by an 8th. If we have the subdivision set on triplets, on the first rhythm there will be a solo click on the second note of a triplet. So the first note is a little drier. But then on number 5 and 6, that rhythm, you need to sustain through that second click. So it's a little different. So forth, like that. Make a difference between the length of those notes. Now, let's talk about agility. This exercise has a lot of that, and this is due to the need for quick finger movement. And a lot of this is using the second and third valve combination. So you've got to really throw that combination very, very quickly. Another point of agility is larger intervals, and that occur very quickly. For instance, measures 9 through 12, we have this jagged rhythm. It's oscillating between the B and the E. Same type of thing, those very quick transitions. Also 21 through 23, that's another. Making sure that not only you get the notes, but also you get the rebound. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about this in a few minutes. Then there are acoustical considerations with this particular exercise. Lower notes will want to sound a little bit softer than higher notes if you play everything the same. That's what happens. It's not anything that the performer is doing wrong. It's just a matter of musical acoustics. Lower notes take a little bit more energy to sound as loud. So when you go to these triplet patterns, say at measure 9, that lower note, that E, you need to give a little bit more energy. If you don't, they have a tendency to get lost, the low notes. So be ready for that. Also, another strike against this particular type of figure is that not only do lower notes have a tendency to sound softer, but also shorter notes have a tendency to sound softer. So those short note E's have a distinct problem. Be ba 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 ba. So I'm really having to kick out that first E. Just to make sure everything has very, very good presence. So this is a property of physics and musical acoustics that we have to correct. We have to correct the way the listener perceives the music. Now, finally, one other thing I do want to address is measures 25 and 26. These lower notes, but now by a lot of more collegiate and beyond horn players, these really aren't that low. But to younger students, we often don't see these notes in a lot of band music. So you're playing a G, going down to an F sharp, going down to an E. I'd recommend playing that low E right now on the B flat horn, second and third. So you have G sharp, F sharp, and then E. Use enough energy to make the notes come out. Really make sure also that your corners are really nice and firm. They don't get all wobbly and jello-y. Here's another trick so that you don't back yourself into a corner. See where I started on that retard, the last 3 bars? Not only does it go slower, but you notice that there's a diminuendo. Remember what I told you about lower notes sounding softer naturally than upper notes, and so we have to compensate by playing louder. If we play this figure and use the same amount of air, don't use any less, don't use any more. If you use the same amount of air, just simply those notes descending is going to make a natural diminuendo happen. So you won't back yourself into a corner. Let's talk about practice strategies for this particular etude. On measures 1 through 4, you have to make sure and play all these accents in a singing style with equal stress of tongue and air. Put your metronome on. Now, all you need to do here is just practice the accented notes only. Notice the difference in the length between the 8th note and the dotted 8th note. Then add the 3rd note of each triplet, so you're taking the pickup note and the accented. Notice how I sustain through the 2nd click. Then we just add the 16th note. The 16th note is halfway in between the 2nd and 3rd click. Here is another item of interest. If you look at measure 13 and 14, the last note of 13 to the downbeat of 14, that interval is a fourth. Now you have this in your ear once. Notice that we repeat back, but then when we skip over to the second ending, a corresponding spot at measure 17 and 18, that B at the end of 17 now resolves not to an E, but to an F sharp. Make sure you're making that difference. I hear some students and they don't know what's wrong. They know that the notes coming down aren't right, but they don't realize that the problem is they're not getting up to the F sharp. The next thing I want to talk about is the B flat side of the horn. We have a double horn here that most of you are going to be playing. We have an F side, and then we have a B flat side. Sometimes I'll play things totally on the F side. Sometimes I'll play things totally on the B flat side. We have a double horn. We might as well use it to our advantage. In this particular exercise, I really do believe that more of a reliance on the B flat side, at least in several passages, are going to allow you a cleaner execution and better stability of pitch. Let's look, for example, at measures 8 through 12. All notes except the first line E reside on the B flat horn. So it sort of makes it a little ridiculous to play all these other notes and all of a sudden play one note on the F horn. Stay entirely on the B flat side, and then you could use trigger 2 for that E. This will simplify things greatly and make the E have a better response. The same thing also will work on measures 20 and 23. And then that was 9 through 10. Then when you go to 11 to 12, still stay on B flat side. The corresponding spot, pick up to 20. Makes things a lot more predictable. Let's look at another spot. Measure 18 to the downbeat of measure 19. Stay on the B flat horn on these 16ths. Your A and your F sharp that conclude that measure can be taken both on trigger 1 and 2. And again, stay on the B flat horn for the E. See, I tried to do that on the F horn and it just really stuffy. Here's another consideration on that same passage. On measure 18, where you have the tie on the F sharp all the way to 2, clear up the rhythm by putting an 8th rest on the beginning of the second beat. It'll just clear up the figure ever so much. And if I do this fast enough, I would recommend when you have the 16ths, do double time. Dee, da ga da ga da. Now, one of the things that will get you is that second and third. It's going to be a little stuffy. Just give a little nudge when you play that C sharp. It'll make it come out a little cleaner. Finally, let's address measures 24 through 26. We have eighth notes coming down, then we have longer notes that are retarding. What I would recommend is to gain control of your retard by subdividing all eighth notes. That way you have complete control with what you're going to do on the long notes. Then think about that when you play it normally. Final observations. Make sure you're ready for the repeat from measure 16 to measure 9. Also, be ready to jump from 12 to 17. What they've done on the engraving, they've made the first part of that line nice and spacious. There's a lot of space between the notes, and then they get to the second ending and they decide to cram everything together. So visually it looks just a little bit more difficult than it really is. So be prepared for that skip. And also be prepared for the da capo, to the sign. After the fermata, take a breath, and then you're in tempo going back to the very beginning, and then you play to the fine. For tempo, I recommend the dotted quarter at 76. Now, if you want to go faster, be sure that it's controllable so that it doesn't sound frantic. Too much slower than 76, and it's starting to sound a little lethargic. What will designate the speed of this particular etude, or how fast you're going to be able to play it, is the figure at 18. Da da dee, da 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 dee, da dee da da da. That's a nice, jaunty, lilting tempo. And it does give you that resolved, determined manner of execution. Let's hear what this particular exercise sounds like in its entirety.